Hello, and welcome to the Global Journalism Seminar Series at the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism. I'm Mira Selva, and today we're joined by Jazmín Acuña, Editorial Director of Paraguay's award-winning visual journalism outfit, El Surtidor. We believe here in creating a global knowledge-sharing network where knowledge sharing goes in all directions, and trust me, there's a huge amount we can all learn from Jazmín, a graduate of Connecticut College and a Jijin scholar who co-founded El Surti 6 years ago as a way to tell journalistic stories to young audiences on mobile phones. Their mission is to provide accurate, challenging, and beautifully visualized information that empowers the audience to connect with others and to take action. Jazmín, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mira. It's a real pleasure for me to be here, to have the opportunity to share what we're doing in Paraguay with visual journalism.
Thank you. Do you want to start by just telling us how did El Surti come about? What was your thinking behind it?
Yeah, well, El Surti, it's the short name for El Surtidor, which is our original name, and people like to call us El Surti, and we like to call ourselves El Surti. To start with, we're a digital news media outlet. We're located in Asunción, the capital of Paraguay. We're right in the center of South America. And like you mentioned, this is our 6th year publishing and promoting visual journalism, which we like to think of as the combination of quality reporting with striking, compelling images and graphics that are inspired from pop culture, the entertainment industry, graphic novels, comics, memes, and so on. And we pack all of these, our text and images, on something so simple as JPEG files. Those are our minimum units of publication. We do more than that, but those are our basic, our fundamentals when it comes to publishing, and they're very easy to read. They're very easy to share on social media. I'm going to show people some of them in a minute. We are a newsroom that assembles reporters, designers, illustrators. Our goal is to inform young audiences from Paraguay that we believe traditional mass media don't pay much attention to. And what we want is to give them information that they can use to mobilize for social change. So that's the reason why we focus our coverage on the issues that affect their lives, like the climate crisis, gender relations, power inequality, and disinformation. How did we start? So we launched El Surti in 2016 with 2 other colleagues who are graphic designers. That explains a lot why we look the way we look. The 3 of us were very frustrated with the effects of rampant social inequality in Paraguay, which is an issue that is deeply rooted in the distribution of land, something that happens all over Latin America. But land in Paraguay is one of our most valued resources. We're a landlocked country, and we are world known for the export of food. But only a few wealthy, especially cattle and soy farmers, own most of the land, which leaves a large majority of small farmers, which we call campesinos, behind. So this inequality also extends to our media landscape. Land-owning elites, they influence and they also own most media news organizations. So within this context, we also saw an opportunity in the growth of digital media in order to get over the issue of media capture by private and land-owning elites. And we also saw an opportunity to speak directly to Paraguay's largest population, which are very, very young people, right? But of course, we had a challenge, like most media. How do we get their attention? That's something that we wonder. Why will they listen to us? Why will they read to our information? So our answer to that challenge was to produce visual journalism. And then we had another challenge, the quality of internet connection in Paraguay. While internet access is improving, we knew that most Paraguayans access the internet via mobile phones. So we made sure to adapt all of our content for mobile and social media where we know that young people engage, right? And well, mobile data cost and bandwidth, low bandwidth, also limit access. So despite the growing trend of reporting with video and live streaming, we chose a format that's a bit less data heavy, the JPEG file. So I want to show you some of the work that we have done. I'm going to share some slides, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, just 1 second. One second. Can you see properly?
We can see half of it. It's not fully on screen, but let me maximize. Yeah, it's not full. Now that's better. The second slide was full. Oh, we could see the. It's
okay.
Just, that slide was fine. Yeah, the rest are fine. It was just the title.
Oh, great, great. So that's the newsroom. We have grown larger. This is a picture. It's already 2 years old. I think we need to update our pictures. This was our first publication in 2016. And this is some of the work that we have done so far. Yeah.
Great. And tell us a little bit how audience have responded to your work. Have you reached the audience you're hoping to?
Yeah, we quickly developed a strong, loyal base of followers, especially in Paraguay, right? They were drawn to our sort of different and novel approach to storytelling, to news storytelling. And also we were not only an independent news outlet with a fresher, with a visually compelling look, covering issues that affect young people. We also were different in the sense that we involve audience members as collaborators along the way. We made sure to provide our audience members ways of participating, and something that's quite unusual locally. That's something very unusual for audiences, for news audiences in the country. So yeah, and we keep growing that loyal base of followers so far.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And you've spoken a great deal about the kind of format and the distribution model. And I'd really like to talk a little bit more about the actual storytelling behind your that's embedded in your work. Do you have, firstly, do you have a special way of working and commissioning? How do you decide what you report on?
Yeah, so I can tell a bit more about the story of how we publish our minimum units of information, our JPEG files. We publish a visual story daily. One graphic takes roughly 2 days or 3 days to produce. It depends on the story. And the whole team collaborates. We are a team of 15, like I mentioned, we have editors, reporters, designers, illustrators. We have someone in charge of product. We have someone in charge of social media. And we meet on Mondays and Thursdays to plan ahead what we're going to publish and the production flow. And reporters, you have to know, work very, very closely with the designers and the illustrators. Our designers and illustrators attend all of our meetings. They discuss with us the themes and the topics that we're going to cover. Also, sometimes we discuss at the editorial meetings what kind of images we're going to use. And once a topic is chosen, the next step is to produce the story, the written text. And journalists write the story as a series of text segments that help the team visualize it as a JPEG file. The content then goes to the designers and the illustrators who work with journalists and myself to brainstorm the best images that can pair with the story. And they look also for pieces of the text which can be cut out and replaced with illustrations. We try to find the right balance between text and images. Then a rough sketch is produced for the graphic designers to create a digital version of it, of the work. Then again, that goes to editing, and then it goes on social media and our website when it's needed. So that's roughly our process, our daily process. And what you're seeing right now on the screen are the steps that all projects that we embark on at El Surti, those are the steps that we go through. We listen to context, we listen to what the audience needs, we explore ways of telling the story, what are the best ways to tell a story. Then we design, we prototype solutions, we edit, we publish, and then we're very careful to learn what has worked, what hasn't. And in every step of the way, we evaluate and decide collectively.
I want to take that graphic and put it on the wall of pretty much every newsroom I encounter anywhere in the world. That it's absolutely brilliantly, again, beautifully visualized design. So thank you. Let's talk a little bit about some individual projects. I really want to kind of delve down into this idea of what works and what has, what you've learned from all of these. So can you start? Can you talk about some projects that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, I want to go over 4 projects, and I'm going to start with Los Desterados del Chaco, which can be roughly translated to the outcast from El Chaco. This was an illustrated series with 4 stories about the Chaco region, which is one of the most diverse ecosystems in South America. It's actually
I think we've lost, yes, Jazmín for a moment. We'll just wait to see if she comes back. I think this is one of the kind of perils of doing a global journalism seminar and getting people to beam in from all around the world, that the internet connection has sometimes breaks. So we'll just give Jazmín a few moments to come back. And in the meantime, if you do have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will put them to her at the end of the presentation. Thank you. And just certainly a note from our comms officers to say, while we're waiting for Jazmín to come back, to remind you what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, which is again an incredible set of speakers. Next week we've got Sheikh from India talking about digital culture in India and really talking about the interplay between social media and popular culture and journalism, again amongst very younger people there. And then the week after we have Hamza Said, who is the co-host of the kind of award-winning podcast, The Trojan Horse Affair. And he is again going to speak about the kind of creation of the podcast and the investigation related to Islamophobia and education in Britain that was kind of serialized in the New York Times. And Jazmín has returned. Welcome back. I see you're on your phone. We can't hear you very well at the moment. No, we can't hear you. Still no sound. I think we should be able to hear you now. Don't you try speaking? Husband, now you're muted. Try now.
Yeah.
Yes, we have you. Welcome back.
I'm so sorry. The power is off. I don't know.
Oh my goodness, no problem at all.
It happens often in Paraguay, though. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. We completely understand. It's happened plenty of times
Sorry.
before.
So now I'm on my cell phone. I don't have the presentation. I apologize, but I can go over the projects that I'm going to mention.
Absolutely. If anybody, if kind of Juan or Caitlin have the presentation and can share slides, we can do that for you. But if not, we'll happily talk. We'll just talk as well.
Okay. Yeah, so I was telling you about the desterados del Chaco. I think I stay on the second story. The second story is about how deforestation in the Chaco region is linked to the European demand for coal and meat. We found that every day, just to satisfy the global demand for products from the Chaco, trees have to be cut down roughly the size of 30 soccer fields every day. And the third story is a very telling case of land issues in Paraguay. It's a story about how the leader of a religious sect became the largest landowner in this region. And the last story is, it's about how indigenous communities have become environmental defenders. We published the story in 2017 in a scrolly telling format, which is a solution that we found to a user problem. Can
you tell us a bit what scrolly is?
Yeah, scrolly telling. So scrolly telling it's a format that allows a user to navigate information, text, and powerful graphics at their own rhythm. With a simple gesture that I think defines millennials and the generations after that, with the up and down movement of the thumb that we all know and do when we're on social media. So that's scrolly telling. And it's a format, it's a very simple format, actually, that combines text and images.
And that's what we're seeing on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Great, thank you. And you've also, let's talk about how you've been using memes, because you covered kind of a presidential speech, a kind of State of the Nation speech with memes.
Every year the president of Paraguay has the constitutional duty to inform Congress and the population in general with what he has done in office. It's pretty much like the US State of the Union address that happens annually. I don't know if there's an equivalent in the UK.
It's every the state opening of Parliament, with which the Queen.
But we know in Paraguay it can go very boring. It can be very boring. It can be very dull. And on one hand, you have the president standing in front of congressmen, throwing a lot of data, a lot of numbers that show his achievements. And on the other hand, reporters repeat what he says, right? The president said this and that. So we wonder how to cover the event in a way that will be different, useful, and fresh. And the answer sort of came up pretty easy. We decided to fact check the data that the president presents to Congress. So that is what we have done since 2018. In doing so, not only did we become the first news outlet in Paraguay to verify in real time the president's speech, we were also the first editorial staff that opened the newsroom to selected members from our audience who wanted to collaborate with us with our fact-checking effort. But what I want to emphasize here is something that you already mentioned. It's our latest innovation, that we have decided to add memes to our fact checks. As always, we want the attention of younger audiences. They're our main target. We want them to get informed. We want them to engage in the public discussion about the president's performance in office. So we thought that the best way to update, to give it a fresher look to this coverage was with memes. And it was not the first time we did it, actually. We've made extensive use of memes in our reporting. Like I mentioned, we make a lot of use of pop references from graphic novels, comics, movies, and so on, in order to establish a deeper connection with our readers. We try to publish in a contemporary language that they can relate to. Well, memes are just great for that, right? Well, we had more reach and engagement than other news outlets in social media by doing this. And then other news outlets took our findings and republished them. But what's even better for us is that traditional media, some newspapers started fact-checking the president's address to Congress also.
This sounds like a very impressive strategy and a highly risky one, because you're doing something live with comedy on a topic that's incredibly important, being spoken by somebody who also thinks he's very important. So has anything gone wrong, or would you do anything differently next time?
I think that we would do it all over again. We believe that no topic should be boring to audiences, and serious coverage can be done with memes, with graphics, with images. That's for sure, and we have learned that in the past 6 years. And we've also learned that, but this is in general, this is not only about the use of memes and graphics in our reporting. We also think that we sort of should be more like memes as a framework for approaching journalistic innovation. What do we mean by this? Memes have qualities, and we found that they have qualities that journalists and journalism could emulate to get closer to new audiences, to compete with all the information and disinformation that's out there, and to also improve the effective use of our resources. So we like to think that we are good at incorporating some of the qualities of memes to approach journalistic work. What are those qualities?
That's what I was going to ask you. What are the qualities of memes?
Well, memes are adaptable, memes are agile, memes are community driven. What do we mean by adaptability, right? Adaptability to reach more people and to be more sustainable. Our output, our production should be adaptable to different platforms, just like memes are, in order so that more people can read our work. We believe that newsrooms should be able to use and reuse their app output as many times as they can. So by this, we mean that it's key that pieces of a publication can adjust easily to your website or all social media platforms, or that they can flow easily on messenger apps, for instance, like memes. Then memes are agile, and agility is great for relevance, right? We have to be fast. Memes and news move fast, and we should be able to identify quickly how we can contribute with our coverage and test our ideas with audiences in a reasonable time frame to stay relevant. So our production has to adapt and respond to an environment that's changing a lot. And then by community driven, we mean that memes only make sense with others, journalism as well. Our duty is to keep our eyes and control power, the ones above us, the 1% above the rest. But we should never leave out the rest. That's what we mean by being community driven. A journalist who's very dear to me once told me that we have become so obsessed with the top of the mighty journalism that we forgot the raise up the people journalism. So as a result, we have seen how skepticism of the media continues to grow hand in hand with the spread of disinformation and lies, a threat to our democracies, for sure. And one of the reasons for this is that disinformation is passed on through networks of affection, as we have seen through WhatsApp, family WhatsApp groups. We believe that a way to counter media skepticism, media distrust, and the fast spread of disinformation is to bridge gaps with audiences by allowing them to participate more actively in the newsmaking process, by being more transparent about our newsmaking process with them, by listening maybe more attentively to their needs, their doubts, their complaints, and taking those into consideration. So that's what roughly we mean by being more like memes and not only using them in our work.
Thank you. Can I just stay on this topic just one quickly? We have a question from Preeti Salian, who is one of our journalist fellows, who's looking at accessibility in news, and in particular, how people with various disabilities can access news and are treated by journalists and journalism. And she wanted to know, how do you adapt, or do you think of adapting your memes or your kind of visual products for those who are visually impaired? Is there any process? Is there any kind of conversion to text or audio?
Oh, that's a great question. And we still have a gap in there. And we're trying to figure out how to adapt our images for visually impaired people, for sure. And we're actually, our product manager, she's now part of an artificial intelligence project where she's trying to figure out how to put text to our images and design that for the visually impaired, for sure.
Great, thank you. Really be interested to know how that goes, because it's something we're looking at elsewhere as well.
Yeah, I will share with you the findings of that work, of that project. It's a great project, actually.
Really sounds it. Great, thank you. Let's go back to kind of talking about your stories, and talk us through the Escuelas Fumigadas project.
Oh, yeah, great thing. Yes. The schools in danger of poisoning due to unlawful agribusiness practices. Yeah, this is a story about more than 7,500 students and more than 1,000 teachers from 90 schools in the countryside of Paraguay, who live with the threat of suffering poisoning by agrochemicals from nearby plantations. They shouldn't live with this danger, with this threat, because there's a law that establishes how far away plantations should remain from schools, hospitals, parks, or any population, in order to safeguard them from agrochemicals, actually. But we found, with public information and satellite imagery, we were able to identify crops that break this law. So what was the challenge with the story? Our challenge was how to best portray this very pressing environmental and health issue. And we solve it by locating all the schools in danger in a map that users can easily navigate, as well as a database that fits the map. However, in order to make sense of our findings, we had to explain to our audience what this law is about and how, in theory, it should be applied. We could have done it in 300 words. We could have written 300 words about how the law works, but we believe that for clarity and for empathy, we have to show with images how the law is supposed to protect children. So what we did, the solution that we came up with, was the sticky scroll that you now can see on the screen. The sticky scroll format, which is very similar to the scrolly telling. It allows the user to navigate the information, text, and images at their own pace, and the images appear on the background. The images appear as the user scrolls down, and they're very useful to visualize with more precision what the text explains. This was a great tool, and it is a great tool for the purpose of providing as much information and context as possible to our audience, so that, our task of, for instance, our task of conveying the danger that kids and teachers are exposed to would be much easier.
Thank you. That looks really terrific. And I do encourage you to go and have a look at it, because you can really explore, and even without the language, you can see what you're really trying to do there. I'm going to have one last topic, kind of big topic, and then we'll open it up to questions. But let's talk a bit about podcasting. So I think that's the next format you're looking at. And again, I'd be interested to know what your strategy is there and how this fits in with your visual storytelling strategy.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a podcast at El Surti. It's called The Espacio Sonoro. It's a podcast that we produce monthly to share long-form stories with audiences. We think of podcast as a visual format. And why is that? Because we believe that the act of listening triggers very powerful images in our heads. And they're very great. The act of listening is great to appeal to strong emotions. Our podcast showcases stories from the dictatorship era and also the period of time where we transition to democracy, and more recently. We make an effort to let the protagonists and witnesses talk about the events that are described in the podcast. Our reporter, who specializes in podcasting, he's in charge of coordinating the production. Well, we decided to do a podcast to register stories that are just mesmerizing or fascinating or moving. But these are stories that usually don't make the headlines or are not part of our official account of history in Paraguay. These are stories that don't usually involve big public figures, and instead they're about common people, right? Communities, neighbors who, like everyone, they all have a story to tell that can actually wade into a larger story that comments on our collective desires, struggles, fears, and hopes. We thought that podcasting was the best way to share these sort of stories because we're a pretty oral society. Guarani, which is one of our native languages, is widely spoken, but it's not necessarily written. And this tradition permeates all of us, even Spanish speakers. So it made a lot of sense to us to keep an oral record of memories that are mainly transmitted, passed on orally. And for sure, podcasting has been great for us. It has helped us grow our audience. We reach new followers that we wouldn't be able to reach otherwise with podcasts. They have an
kind of audience. Is that a different audience to the ones who follow your kind of more visual?
No, not necessarily, but they are mostly under 24 years old, that from urban areas. Podcasts have an average completion rate, just to tell you, of 85%. The audience spends at least 15 minutes on average listening to our podcast. So you were wondering about how does this feed right into our strategy. We believe that their podcasting is an ideal format to share stories and trigger empathy and solidarity in ways that other formats cannot. And they're a great antidote to divisions that are so common today. They're great for defying prejudices and stereotypes. And podcasts demand careful, kind attention. They predispose us to listen, to pause, to reflect more. And like I mentioned, they're very visual. They invite the listener to imagine the situations that are described in the podcast, to put themselves in other people's skins. Our reporter in charge, he likes to say that instead of drawing the story ourselves, we leave the task to the listener to do that in its head.
That's really beautiful. That's a kind of beautiful, like you said, you've conjured up an image that I can see of sitting there in someone's head. I'm going to go down now to the journalist fellows in the room, because I think there are a lot of questions arising from the points you've raised. I'll start with Robin. Hi.
Hello, thanks so much for this, it's so interesting. You mentioned at the start that you have the designers at the very beginning of planning the story, and I wondered whether that changes the content at all, or whether it's more about just telling the story that you would have told but in a more effective way.
So I'll just repeat the question there. It's when designers and storytellers come together at the beginning to create the content, do the designers end up changing the product that comes out, or do they take the content they're given and find the most effective way of producing it? How interactive is the process?
Yeah, I think the answer goes around the second part of the question. Designers and illustrators don't change our content, and they're more focused on what's the best way of telling the story that they have in hand. What's the best way of giving more substance, maybe with illustrations, to the text that they have to work with. For sure, the answer goes more around the second part of the question. They don't necessarily change or alter the content of reporting, because we have to be very careful. Reporters have the duty to be very rigorous and precise with the information that we provide. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the Q&A box, where there are lots of interesting questions as well. And you've talked about your independence and the fact that you're reaching new audiences and really going to places where the legacy media don't go, and are unable to go in many ways. And there's a question from Swati Bakshi, which is, can you talk a little bit about your revenue models? Because generally independent outlets do struggle, in this everywhere. So we'd be really interested to know how your business is going financially, what your revenue models are.
Yeah, for sure. From the start, we decided not to pursue a for-profit advertising strategy, just to start with that. We don't necessarily have the audience to compete for ad dollars or guaraníes. And we also wanted to prioritize uncompromised journalism. So grant funding supports at least half of our operation. 50% of our budget comes from grant funds. And the remainder is largely financed by selling services. We've learned that our skills in visual journalism could be in high demand. So we're trying to now market this expertise. 18% of our revenues are generated from communications consulting. We have established a separate business unit. We have trained other people. We have like an ad hoc team that replicates our infographic products for private organizations and firms. These are organizations that follow our work, they like our work, and then they come to us and they say, I want my communications campaign to have the same look that your publications have. So we have a team for that. And that has worked, we established that 2 years ago. And now it represents 18% of our revenues. Then an additional 17% last year came from our regional training program. We have a training program called Latinográficas. Our goal there is to foster visual journalism throughout the region. By training other newsrooms in our methodology, we select illustrators, reporters, designers from countries in Latin America. And we launched the program in 2020, like I mentioned, with an open call and to help combat disinformation about the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we did another edition last year. And so at the program, what we did is we taught our fellows how to transform quality reporting into visual pieces that are very easy to read, that are very easy to understand, produce, remix, and share, especially on social media. And 17% of the revenues, of our revenues came from this program, from sponsors that really liked the program and they wanted to support it. And so we're trying to diversify our revenue model. It's definitely a challenge. Like we're all going through this challenge and trying to figure out the right formula for that. And we're working on that for sure.
Thank you. And the very first model you mentioned, the kind of the consultancy work for private corporations, how do you make sure that audiences are very clear that this is a journalistic product from your organization and this is a kind of paid for corporate product? Is it kind of branded differently? Do you use different colors? How does it work?
It's branded differently, for sure. All of our journalistic production comes with our logo, with also, you know, signs and that tell the audience that these are our journalistic publications. Also, the communication, for instance, a communications campaign for an NGO, we wouldn't publish that on our website or on our social media. We produce for other firms and NGOs, organizations. We produce products that they will use solely, and we don't offer our social media or our website to share the production that we have at the ad hoc team.
Thank
services.
You. Thanks very much for clarifying. Back into the room, and Hannah. Hi.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm from Norway. Thank you for being here. I was wondering, are there any types of stories that you found don't really work or are really hard to visualize and that you sort of shy away from?
Is there anything that doesn't work? Any types of stories that don't work with your formats?
So far, all the stories that we wanted to approach with visuals have worked well with visuals. I couldn't think of a story that we couldn't tell with our images. I think that for every story there's a way out with compelling images. Things that are very hard to cover in Paraguay, but because of security reasons, is drug trafficking, for instance. We don't go over that. We don't have enough, I think, guarantees to cover those issues, but it has nothing to do with our format. So pretty much all stories can be told, can be narrated with powerful images. But of course, there are very complex issues that demand a 2,000 word or 3,000 report with written text. And we do that. We just make sure that we also have a way to go on social media with our JPEG files, our slides and stories, and pair that long form text or even our podcast with images, with the images that we produce, with illustrations. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, there's a question from the audience from Kimberly Brown related to this, which is that you want to use images to generate empathy, but you use illustrations rather than photographs. And is there a conscious, is it a deliberate decision to stay away from photography, or is that elsewhere?
We have also used photography for sure, but it's a decision. It's a decision that it's a bet also. We bet on illustrations to generate empathy. And when we find that we have to use photographs, we have done photographs as well.
Thanks. Thank you. And back to the room now and to Louis. Hi, you there?
Hi, Jazmín. I'm Luis from Brazil. Thank you for having us. My question is, did you ever had your RISJ credibility questioned because of the format in which you publish your stories?
The question, has your credibility ever been questioned because of the format?
Yes, we have. Some people, especially at the beginning, they didn't think that we were serious about our reporting because we use drawings. But that has changed. I think that has changed. Throughout the years, we have proved ourselves to be serious journalists who are after serious coverage. We just decide to do our serious coverage with illustrations and powerful graphics. But yes, that's a good question, because it has happened. It tends to happen that people overlook and don't take images sometimes seriously. I think that we're not being serious enough about issues, but no, we have used images to cover very difficult topics like sexual abuse, homicides, and things like that.
Eric Hissier, sorry, I hope I pronounced your name, from Taiwan is in the kind of online audience and was asking a related question about objectivity. So most audiences still kind of hope or want their news media to be objective. And how do you at El Surti think through this process when it comes to visual journalism?
Yeah. Well, we take a different approach to how we present ourselves to our audiences. One of our principles is that we ought to be transparent, and we kind of assume that we're not fully objective like everyone, right? We're always telling a story from the angle we see it, from the position we are in. So we're trying to be transparent with that, with our audience. We tell them where we come from, what our sources are. So it's much more important to us to be transparent rather than objective. When it comes to the choice of images, we try to be balanced, and we try to follow principles that I think apply to all kind of journalistic work also. We try to show diversity in our images. We try to not re-victimize. We try not to glorify perpetrators with our images. We are careful not to portray stereotypes. Like I mentioned, instead, we try to define prejudices and stereotypes with our images. We try to not be explicit with violence when it's not necessary. We try to respect families and victims themselves. So for us, that's much more important than being objective. It means more to us to take a position in regard to the choice of images, these positions, rather than being objective. We don't, how does it doesn't, like being objective doesn't actually tell us much about how, or guide us much about how we should portray different situations, different reports.
Thank you. I'm going back into the room because Niken from Indonesia had a question kind of that touches on this, on access and distribution and bandwidth. Niken.
Yeah. Hi, Jazmín. Thank you for coming here. I'm from Indonesia. I want to ask about how you deliver your story, your visual story, reach the audience in the blank spot area or bad internet, and how you deal with that situation, delivering story with that kind of inequality in infrastructure. Thank you.
So this is thanks, Nick. And this is how do you reach audiences in blank spots where where bandwidth doesn't really exist and mobile data can be patchy as well.
Well, we owe that to the audience that doesn't have internet access, for sure. We're more focused on young people who are in urban areas who for sure have access to internet. Internet penetration is much better these days in Paraguay than before, than when we started 6 years ago, for sure. But we don't necessarily have a strategy to get to those places where there's no internet access. Yeah, that's the short question.
Beyond calling for more internet penetration. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll go to Simon from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, who's done a great deal of work on graphics as well.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I was just curious whether you had kind of a set of third-party platforms that you support as kind of standard and you target for publication. Like, do you do Insta stories? Do you publish on Google's web stories format, or do you kind of do that as an ad hoc story-by-story process?
Which platforms do you use for your stories, and do you use the same platforms, or do you do it as a ad hoc? Does it depend on the story, or do you have certain platforms you use all the time?
Oh, yeah. If I got the question right, because it kind of cut at some point. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are also for podcasts on Spotify and other podcast app services. And we try to be in all of them, especially on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, for sure. For every publication that we have, we try to publish in all those platforms, and for sure our website. Yes.
And what kind of relationship?
Sorry?
Curious, what kind of relationship do you have with the platforms? Do you know the local representatives? Are you happy with the reach you get on them?
It could be better, for sure, the relationship with the representatives, but we do have conversations and their contacts, and when we need them, we approach them with issues that we need to solve on those platforms. But definitely, it could be better.
What's your wish list? If it could be better, what would you like?
Oh, we will definitely want to have a say in the politics of their algorithms, for sure. There has been so many changes in algorithm politics that we don't know about, and that have had a huge impact on our reach, right? Like, it has happened to all news organizations. I think, I think that will be my wish list. I would love to understand better what kind of choices they make when deciding what the algorithm will be like.
I think that's, again, something a lot of media organizations talk about generally. Going back to the online audience, there's a question from Sanele Sandilindela, which is when establishing El Surti, what kind of bureaucratic challenges did you overcome? What were the kind of biggest obstacles kind of setting up and growing?
Well, for sure, sustainability, funding. The first 2 years of El Surti, we were all doing side jobs. El Surti was not our main job. It was not my main job. Only it was in 2018, I think, I started earning a salary from El Surti. That was our goal when we started. We said we want to make a living with this. We want to be able to live fully just by being journalists, right, and editors. So that, for sure, that was an obstacle that we fortunately we overcame. Another obstacle, and I think that happens a lot with emerging media, that we start up news organizations because we want to publish stories that we think that are not out there, that are not well covered. And however, we don't know much about management, and that's key. I think if there was something that I would have loved to know more about when I started El Surti, would be management. Management is so important. It is so important to have a business unit and accountability in order. It's key. It's key to our survival, and especially also when the team starts growing. There's so many tasks that we have fulfilled only in the past few years. Is that we started like drawing our workflows, designing our code ethics, establishing better communication channels, internal communication channels. Communication at a news organization can be very difficult, and that's something that we should all work on, for sure. Like, it's not a guarantee that just because we're journalists we'll be good at communicating with ourselves.
No, not at all.
Yeah, for sure. So those are things that those were obstacles, for sure, like sustainability, funding, and management skills, leadership skills too.
It's really interesting. We should get you on some of our programs. Final question, because we've really given you a very busy hour, especially given that you're also doing this on your phone, from Shamindra Kulamanage, which is, what does success look like to you? What are your KPIs, if you have them? What's the success measure?
Right now or for the future?
Now and the future.
Well, the future. well, to me, success will be to survive, to remain alive as a news organization for 20 more years. Success will also be that the news organization continues after us, that I might just as well take a different path, go to another news organization, which I don't want, of course, but that other people will come in and follow our path and follow our principles and the way we approach journalism. I think that that'll be success for sure. And right now, success is reaching more people. Yes, growing our audience for sure.
I mean, what is your audience at the moment? Like, how many people are you reaching?
Yeah, on average, every week, 300,000 people. We have more than 150,000 followers on all social media, and we reached like double that number.
That's not bad at all. And one last question from me about trust. Do you have a sense of how trusted you are in the media space, and especially compared to the older media, the legacy media amongst the public?
I feel that we're trusted when we open up spaces to talk with our audience more closely. They always respond. They're always members of the audience willing to collaborate with, for instance, our fact-checking efforts. They're always members who want to join us and come and visit our newsroom. Those are things that transmit trust to me.
And it's something that you're doing, but I don't get the sense other news organizations in Paraguay are doing anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's something different that, from the rest of the news, from the rest of news organizations.
Jazmín, thank you so much. It's been the most enlightening hour, and it's such incredible work you're doing, and all the very best of luck. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mira. Thank you for the hour, for the opportunity to share with you what we're doing in Paraguay. Again, apologies because I had to join, through my cell phone. So sorry about that.
No problem. Really glad you could rejoin, and we will share the visuals in the future as well. So no worries about that. And take care.
All right. Bye-bye.